Hello and welcome to my cellar. For some of you, I'm a day late. For those of you who don't watch until now or later, I'm right on time. Amazing, isn't it? Anyway, got a lot of things to go over tonight. And first off was a mistake I made in last week or the week before. I should have credited the creation of the Druid to Dennis Astari, Dr. Dennis Astari. He and Gary had been corresponding, not on this, but they're the two that did almost the identical research and came up with the same details. So, sorry, Dennis. Okay. You think Gary Gygax is spinning in his grave, really? I think he's truly feeling more elated and happy than ever since he ascended. I think Gary is looking out, watching, truly inspiring people to push their creativity, coping with these difficult times better than ever. Yeah, I stand by my statement. For better or for worse, the game that Gary and Dave created is a relic. There's... to be honest, a lot of the stuff in 5e and a lot of this woke stuff, I think Gary would have thought was just silly. This was a pretend game about fighting pretend monsters and saying that he thought orcs up as his, orcs came out of Tolkien. Tolkien had them as mean and evil, a deformed, polluted race, half beast, half man, etc. And I don't think there was any race involved there. The wokeness is, I'm sure he would find sardonically amusing. All right, here we go again on experience points. Experience points awards are up to the DM. Hence, the progression of the player is subject to the tempo and power level the DM is using in their game. Personally, I play a faster progression up to 4th or 5th, and then a slower progression to, say, 11th. For me, these mid-levels are the sweet spot of the game and represent better survivability for the players and greater challenges. I bonus XP for treasure based on the player's level as a percentage of the combined face values of all the treasure, gems, furniture, weapons, and both magical weapons, items excluding potions and scrolls, taken from the dungeon and secured. Makes for easy accounting and a fair ratio of monsters to treasure based on level. Higher level players are only going to cherry pick the loot anyway, so it balances out organically. Whether the loot is worth that face value or not is another story. Okay, I understand what you're saying. That's why, especially back in the early days, I was always so loosey-goosey about letting people come back in and starting out higher, not starting over a 1. We'd roll an average die. So you couldn't start at 1, but you might start at 4. That's cool. And total treasure divided by, that's cool. Now, some groups have, or still do, have their own little charter, so many parts to each, and, they have 7 players, they make 15 portion, 15 shares. And everybody gets a share, and then the other ones get apportioned or divvied up or, whatever. I'm all, that's fine. That's fine. I still stand by my original assertion that I don't support the idea that a piece of gold is worth an experience point. Again, I'll go back to my other example about if you followed the charts and an aberration occurred, It'd be like, punching a kitten and getting a big a big topaz. Anyway, enough of that. Okay, now this was an interesting one. Hi, Tim. Just a quick check-in. How are you feeling about the channel these days? Well, I'm enjoying it. This is number 190. It's a lot more reply chatter nowadays. And he says he knows because he's guilty of it. And I just want to make sure it's not blocking your flow or dampening your interest. No, if it was, I wouldn't be doing this anymore. But thanks for asking. Are there any particular topics you would like your audience to steer towards? No. I'd much rather be spontaneous and just go with the flow. Okay. And then he goes on to say, by the way, I see your old friend Porn is posting again. Yeah, I seem to get a couple, 3 of those every week lately. Yeah, what are you going to do? Okay, next. Amazing how soft this generation is that they get offended when someone simply disagrees with them. Keep giving it to them, Tim. Well, I don't do it to elicit the response, but I sure sometimes enjoy the response when it does come out. Do you like to use a big bad in your campaign games, i.e. an overarching enemy of the good to which players refers as the ultimate enemy, thereby also an ultimate goal of the campaign? I don't now. I'm not campaigning now. If I were to do it again today, if I were to go that direction, it wouldn't be apparent at the beginning. After several different encounters and adventures, whatever, then there would be clues of who's directing all this. And that's one of the easiest things a DM can do to provide himself with fodder for writing, the next encounter or whatever. Because, if you can hook the players, it writes itself for you. Okay, we're off to see the wizard, and you got an outdoor adventure and, right there, whatever. Do you need to? No. You can have. I could see if on a long running campaign you could have more than one big bad. Another threat arises to the world of Makanda, that type of thing. And it's a crutch to be able to say, oh, the bad guy took care of this, and he's supplying them with arms and ammunition, whatever. It's a convenient crutch and a convenient prop, and it can be fun. In my Carbondale campaign, they never did confront the big bad evil guy, but they knew who he was and they knew what they were trying to do and how he figured into what they were seeking, etc. But they never did find him. It was just an offstage goal or prod. Sorry. Get dry easy lately. Okay, now we're going to go into some of the woke stuff. The Orcs as a metaphor for African Americans is the most stupid thing I think I've ever heard. First I heard that was when in 2007, after the Lord of the Rings movies had come out and has no actual basis to anything. I totally agree with you in that. Again, I guess the one outstanding example of where, you could be offensive is the Roma or the Rom or the Gypsies. Or I guess if you, I'm Irish, but I don't care if you rank on the travelers because they are a bunch of crooks, and we've had them here in Cincinnati over the years. They come by and do the tar your roof jobs with paint. Yeah, okay. Um, okay, now this one I'm going to clarify for somebody who wrote this. Rabbits? Not that I was going to have rabbits as D&D characters, but God bless the D&D geeks who are giving the novel Watership Down a lasting tribute. Well, no, they're not. Dennis Astari did rabbits a long time ago with Bunnies and Burrows, and that was based on Watership Down. So anything the Wizards have been doing since is derivative. Again, I'm stacking up for my friend Dennis. And maybe you're not old enough to know that. I mean, I understand. I'm on the very edge of the age group that are gamers, and it's a long way up here, let me tell you. But no, Dennis already did it. However, this isn't Dennis's game. It's different in its survival. It's very, Dennis has got a PhD, and it shows in the depth of his character development and how the rabbits interact with each other and how they can't count. And not at all what they're doing with this crap with jumping around rabbits who are a pain in the ass. At least that's what it looks like it's going to be. It's not completely out yet. I'm basing it on the previews and exposure that I've seen. So is Bugs Bunny. Yeah, well, I don't think we need to go with Bugs Bunny. I don't know if you could kill him, and if you did, how many million experience points you'd get for killing Bugs Bunny, and how much opprobrium you would draw from everybody else. You killed Bugs Bunny? Anyway. All right, here we go again on treasure and XP. Maybe I can present a better perspective on treasure for XP. A little presumptuous. Like many things in D&D, it's an abstraction and it's supposed to be taken too literally. Yes. And that's why I don't take it literally. And every time we wrote a game, we wrote in the foreword or the introduction, these aren't written in stone. Feel free to move them in. Well. All right. But let's see. XP for defeating monster. XP is also an abstraction. It's not the slaying of the monster that releases the X points for your PCs to absorb, but the abstract sense that defeating one represented the achievement of a goal and that required effort and involved danger. Yeah. I've sat around in bull sessions over the years at various cons and talked about how certain monsters were just big walking bags of XPs. And you stabbed them and all those XPs ran out. I didn't know we absorbed them, but we benefited from them. Okay, let's pick this back up. Okay, XP for treasure was generally only awarded for treasure recovered from dungeons or other dangerous places, and just as with defeating monsters, recovering treasure represents the achievement of a goal that required effort and braving danger. So good so far. Experience for treasure is often preferred by many in the OSR over experience for defeating monsters because of the behavior it encourages. Instead of trying to pick a fight with every band of orcs you can find, PCs are encouraged to think more tactically and avoid unnecessary fights, keeping their eyes on the prize, so to speak. Another good point. Can't argue that. Yeah, run and run. I'm going to refer to Jolly Blackburn and the Knights of the Dinner Table again. There have been references, anybody seen, some pathetic thing, they're that close to leveling up, and they need to go out and kill a couple of, cows or something. How many XPs do we get for killing wiener dogs? Or, causing something that caused all those wiener dogs to die. We didn't mean it, but how many XP do we get? And that's certainly in that vein of thought. XP for monsters and treasures are both easily quantifiable systems that require less arbitrary judgment and can serve as a yardstick for other experience rewards. Yes, but you can't take out the arbitrary. And that's why I think the DM needs to Award bonuses for exceptionally good play, a brilliant idea. I think those are also big carrots to wave on the end of a stick. I don't even see the point. All right, next question. I don't even see the point of wasting time tallying experience points for leveling up characters from session to session. As a DM, you either get a sense for the popular demand of what level player characters the players want to play with each session, the kind of leveling up that needs to be done between sessions to respond to the greater challenge, and then respond to the challenge by making the adventure reasonably challenged for both the DM and the players. It really is that simple. I just don't understand the scorecard approach at all anymore. Well, we'll beg to differ on this one, okay? It doesn't take much time to write a quick synopsis of what happened. You can put the weight on the players and tell them to take the notes of what they did, and so that they can give it all to you at the end, and you can then adjudicate and award points. There's a tone running through this that I find alarming, though. As a DM, you either get a sense for the popular demand of what level player characters they want to play. Tough. Earn them. If I sit down with a bunch of people and we're going to start a new campaign or a series of games or whatever, I'm not going to make them start at 1, but I'm not going to lavish goodies and everything. Might roll an average die, start as a 2, 3, or a 4, and yes, the fun is playing them up there, and then when you hit 5, 6, 7, yes, you're really hitting your stride, as the earlier poster stated. However, I would not have much respect for a DM who altered his game significantly because the players they want to be higher level. Well, earn it. Now, I have run games, particularly at cons, where I use a different set of pre-gens that are all 5th, 6th, 7th levels. And in old school D&D, those are pretty potent characters. They're right there in that really fun area to play. And then I'll challenge them as befits their characters and it's the old how many hit points of bad guys versus how many hit points in the adventurers group, and what ratio? 4 to 1, 7 to 1. 7 to 1 obviously has greater rewards. Okay, I know you covered this in an earlier video, but I'm failing to find it. Can you tell me how a group of my friends and I can play a game of the Wheel of Blame? Okay, yeah. Go on Facebook, private message me, put a comment at the end of this with your email address, and I'll contact you. It's really not hard. Hardest thing seems to be finding for the group to find the time when we can all do this then than I can do. Now I'm retired, so I'm a lot more flexible, and I don't mind playing till 1 or 2 in the morning because I can get up whenever the hell I want the next day. So, and I don't run games on Friday night because that's when I normally record these. All right. New topic. The Thief to Rogue switch happened with AD&D 2nd edition, where a lot more was sanitized. Half orcs and assassins removed, demons and devils renamed. Though in both 2nd and 5th, Thief is a default subclass of a rogue, so it's not entirely gone. Yeah. I'll tell you what, that was one of the hardest parts of making a new character class, was finding names for the various levels. How many synonyms can you find for thief? How many archaic, cut purse, footpad, burglar? Yeah, I understand that they sanitized. They were looking to lower the age level of players and buyers. They were, in some regard, dealing with the remains of the Satan panic crap with, and so if they took out, half orcs were barely in there to begin with, and I fought against them, and I lost, obviously. Assassins, yeah, I don't even like the assassin class as a PC. An NPC, it's fine. I don't tolerate if a thief, now a rogue, joins a group to go on a mission or becomes one of the gang or whatever. I absolutely do not tolerate the thief stealing from the group. Now, thief trying to palm a stone or something, well, that's up to him and on his, and whether or not he gets caught doing that and the repercussions that could be. Some people argue, well, I'm not being a thief. Well, yes, you are. You are hired for your very special abilities. Your backstabbing and your lockpicking and all that kind of thing. That's why I like mostly neutral parties. Just had far less friction. And here's in follow-up to that. Had a lot of comment replies this time. The difference between rogue and thief is kind of like George Carlin's sketch on the euphemisms between freedom fighter and terrorist for the politically correct news media. I guess the legend of Robin Hood is a rogue, and the meth junkies down the street who burglarizes people's houses is a thief. You okay? Jesus, the rogue did most of the same stuff in the second edition anyway, didn't he? So, okay, you whitewashed, you painted over the red house and you made it gray. Okay, same house, different color. Had the same number of rooms. Tend to smell the same funny way every Friday night when they fried whatever it was they fried on Friday night. Okay, here's an interesting position this gentleman has taken. And talk about it. I do enjoy writing rules for players to play unusual creatures as PCs, like ogres, dragons, or undead. But when I do, I always make sure the structure of the character is sufficiently different from playing a standard human or even a demi-human. The further from a human the character is, the more it ought to deviate from the standard PC script of ability scores, classes, levels, etc. Ogres, for example, don't roll their strength score, but rather have a strength dependent upon their level, which is also a measure of their maturity, eventually reaching 20 at level 4 when they're fully grown. Trying to shoehorn a weird and exotic species into just another set of ability score modifiers and throw away racial abilities that a player can use to play any class of character is unfortunately the key to the lazy way most modern games approach the subject, and completely devalues the differences such creatures ought to have, and does harm to the integrity of the fictional world. The mechanics of the rules ought to support the fiction. Can't argue that. And now I'm the first to admit I'm not fully cognizant of all the many variations. But as soon as I saw it, I thought Dragonborn was a joke. Again, my opinion is, in view of the original sense and intent of the game, that all these aberrant, weird types are just min-maxing. They're taking whatever abilities and more important, whatever natural abilities or immunities, that's the word I'm looking for. They're taking the immunities of it's I don't know. I just don't like it personally. And if there was some kind of, Dragonborn, that should be an NPC who comes down out of the sky and either messes with them or helps them. Again, my opinion. Elves, dwarves, humans. Can't think of anything else. But I see no reason why, with the various professions available, there has to, okay, I'll go for a gnome, and I'd play it like Dobby. I don't know, maybe it's just Gary infected me too. I don't know. This gentleman's approach for a specific way that player character is going to work outside of the normal rules, that's great. Because it's going to make it a lot harder for him to min-max. Here's a comment. I feel like 5e WotC are trying very hard to be all things to all gamers as long as 5e D20 might be. I saw a thing on Facebook today that WotC hasn't published anything original or new in quite some time. And when WAG went so far as to say they've never published anything that was D&D because of the way they took it. I'm not going there. WotC figured out a way to sell a whole buttload of games that happens to call itself D&D. To go back to the original thing about Gary spinning in his grave. I know he would be spinning in his grave on the proliferation of player classes. I absolutely know from my years working with him, what I know about how his brain worked and what he held dear from mythology and tradition and that, and what he blended into the game. No, absolutely not. And that's part of why the other older edition players are having such a problem with 5e, is because it breaks all the somewhat sacred tenets. All right, back to sage advice. One of the local stores needs DMs for when in-person games are safe again. 3 to 4 hour sessions will be one and done with little to no effect on the world. Players could run a new character each session if they desire. In this framework, what do people seem to enjoy most? How do you decide the right mix of monster encounters, puzzles, traps, and role-playing? How do you make it fun instead of just something to occupy Friday night? Gentle chiding. You did not list one of the most important ingredients, and that's laughs. Now, my games have lots of laughs. Your games may have fewer, but there should be some laughs in there. Guess what is laughter? But an outward expression of having fun. To answer the question, if it's going to be a new batch every week, then I do something surprisingly like Wheel of Blame, and just run it as many times as you want until you get tired of it, and then find a new one. That's if you're having new players all the time. Now, if you're going to get a semi-regular group, and say you're going to have 5 or 6, I'd have 8 PCs, so that if somebody else wanted to come in on the already running group, they wanted to join in for a night, okay, give them one of the other PC sheets. Hey, Bob, where you been? Oh, I'm here now. It's all good. All right. I think that a great number of players enjoy thinking things out. Call it a puzzle, call it a conundrum, because when properly sprung upon them, you will get that initial idea coming from the group. It's this, it's that, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And those moments, when everybody's got an idea, can gel into, okay, this is where we're going. This is the way we're going to go. This is how we're going to do it, etc. There should be, it would be good to, again, I don't want to dictate, it would be good to have a couple of easy encounters and then hit them with something a little more difficult later on. A couple of easy encounters to get in the hang of rolling dice and et cetera and et cetera. And then once they got the mechanics figured out, then challenge them. Traps. I blow hot and cold on traps. If I had a bunch of newbies, the tricks and traps I used would not necessarily be immediately lethal. If 6 darts spring out of the wall when you step on that stone, I wouldn't let them get hit by more than 1 or 2 and let them just get the crap scared out of them by all the ones that missed. The object lesson is learned by not only by the player, but by the group if they're paying any attention at all. Again, the mix, it's like asking the cook what you're going to cook. Well, who am I serving? Am I cooking for a bunch of 4th graders? Or am I cooking for a bunch of high schoolers? Am I cooking for a bunch of grown-ups? Because I use cooking as a comparison because cooking and contriving adventures are very much alike. The right ingredient mix, it's wonderful, and you go a little too heavy or a little too light on one of the elements, and it doesn't work. The cake falls. Excuse me. So, I know it's not much of an answer, but I hope I gave you the tools to help you figure that out on your own. At the beginning I said, you do something like the Wheel of Blame. Well, the Wheel of Blame changes every time it's played, even by the same people. So sign up for a session and see how it's done. And then see if that's what you want to do. I could run a Wheel of Blame every Friday night from now until I die and never go tired of running it. Maybe missing out on Friday night stuff, or Saturday night stuff, or whatever day I did it. But because it never, I love running it because it's never the same thing twice. And that was the respondent. There was a reply to that saying, that's a tough question. Flexibility might be the best strength. And that's right. Adapt to what your people, not only what they want, but what you think they can handle. And yes, what you think is more important than what they think. Because you are tasked with setting the stage, being the ringmaster, and helping them entertain themselves for the rest of the night. Here's another one. To be honest, I'm still on the fence, but leaning towards doing it. Oh, okay. This is the original poster. I forgot. I leave the names off when I do this because I don't ever identify anybody. My comfort zone is OSR, and I still need to learn enough 5e to make a good showing. Well, there's a funny wording right there. If these are a bunch of newbies, they don't know if it's a good showing or a bad showing. They have nothing to compare it against. And if you're comfortable in OSR, if you're comfortable with old first edition, then run what you're comfortable in. Your love of the game, your joy in the game, your participation in the whole thing will be very, very apparent to your players. And you'll help infect them and cause them, hopefully, at some point, to love the game. If you're struggling through a 5e with a bunch of greenhorns, they're going to realize this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Go with what you know. Then, the beauty of OSR is modify. Modify to fit your group. Okay. And, well, I forgot this was it. No. Shows you how much I prepare for this. I almost answered all the next one. If your target audience is mostly complete newcomers rolling an old school game, they'll take to it better. And if you now this is good. That's why I printed this. If you have to run a 5e, I suggest allowing only the basic rules or some variant thereof. And this individual would personally modify or remove some of the default subclasses. For instance, having every wizard be an evoker is weird. Just remove the arcane tradition feature. They don't need it. And champion fighters are simultaneously boring, encouraging of min-maxing and immersion and breaking at high levels with their auto-healing capability. I'd replace the champion features with extra skills and fighting skills or something else that improves their flexibility rather than the raw power. Yeah, let them earn that raw power. Let them earn it. Let them go out and do feats of daring do, discover something that'll give them that boost. Further on this topic, first edition is way easier to manage as a DM than all the mechanical hubris of, I like that one, of later variants. Biggest factor is fun and inclusion. Bingo. Using pre-gems is a good way to control the adventure because you'll set the capabilities of the party versus the encounters you have created. Bingo. Very perspicacious. Put your finger right on that. If you have, and I'm not being sarcastic, if you have traps and undead, then the cleric and thief you have populated will be able to use their respective talents. Also, if you have a mixed bag of new and experienced, pre-gens mitigate the frustration of the novice. When Joe's min-maxed half-orc sorcerer barbarian he has cooked up over 6 weeks of research steals the show. Yeah. All right, further follow-up. I hear you on 5e. I find it a boring read. I try to skim through it to find the mechanics to boil it down. But there's only so much folderol I can wade through in one sitting. Time yourself. See how many pages you wade through in 20 minutes. It's disheartening. Okay, now we're going to get into some nitty-gritty historical stuff that I enjoy myself. I've always imagined plate armor as having metal covering the abdomen and chest, and leather tie straps and open in the back. This would make 2 separate ACs, one for front protection, the other back protection with a different AC. I've never played this, just pictured it in my mind. A reply. There's already a bonus for attacking from behind that helps account for this. Recall shields only apply for attacks from the front or shield side and not the shieldless or rear flank. Talking AD&D here. Also, technically, if you aren't wearing a helmet, intelligent creatures get to attack you there with a greatly reduced armor class. The rules are there, just depends on whether your table apply them. Further goes on, I would think the tie straps would have to be at the sides, they'd have to be accessible to the wearer, while their movement is reduced due to wearing the armor, back plates operating like front plates. Okay, there's such a thing as partial plate. And Gary never defined what parts. So, full plate would obviously have a plate back piece, a plate front piece, and big plate plates, at least on your upper legs. Partial plate could be any combination of that. And the shield and shield side, is not a consideration I take into account, but it's valid to do so. Yes, without a shield, your armor class drops at least one. So if your armor class is 5, and I use 9 down the old way. If your armor class is 5, it assumes you have a shield, and if you don't, well, then you're a 4, or a 6, rather. You're a 6. The thing with the head, that's a called shot thing. I don't like called shots most of the time. But yes, if you do hit location and they take the hit in their head from a mace, well, I would just up the damage a whole lot. But that's just me. And as far as where the straps would be, yeah, if you're not a knight with a page to help you in and out of your armor, you're pretty much screwed. And that's why I've often, back when I used to let people sort of modify their characters and play, I often mocked and made fun of the people wearing full plate because you can't walk down a corridor silently. And where's the page that's going to help you get out of that plate? Because you can't put it on by yourself. Not conventional plate mail. It's not possible. And yeah, not having anything in the back is the strike from behind, the double damage that a rogue does by striking from behind. Now, again on armor, and I don't know where this person got this. Gary explained that armor class was a simplified system. I'm assuming he probably got it off Dragon's Foot. The to hit roll implied a hit that inflicted damage. Yes. Or in this case, in the other more nuanced determination of what hit points are, one less wild, lucky move, feel it whiz over your head, whatever. So yeah, this is one that you had to move from. It took off some of your agility. The weapon versus armor type values took this into consideration in first edition. Broadsword might be -3 to hit plate, but a military pick would be +2. Yeah, that's why it's important to, if you're wielding a weapon, to know everything your weapon will do against anything you might reasonably run up against. And as the DM, you got to know that too. But as the DM, if the unmodified to hit roll is 13, and they don't say, oh yeah, and it's a pick, so it's, then I don't give it to them. They got to know what their weapon does to get the advantages to the die rolls. Let's see, pick this up. Attacks from the flank or rear negate dexterity and shield bonuses and add +2 to hit. You could still argue that the broadsword, even if attacking from the rear, incurs this penalty in lieu of the bonuses to hit due to the protection versus armor weapon type. And here again, it begs the question, how nitty-gritty do you want your combat to be? I tend to play a more abstract version, much more like original Greyhawk, for those who know the difference, weapon damage differences and whatever. I tend to play more. I very seldom find myself in a situation where I have the player characters pairing off. I like a general swirling melee, however you pronounce it. I prefer that image so that sometimes, say the 4 players are fighting for somethings. 3 of the players hit. Then I determine which of the 4 somethings they hit. Now, all 3 of them might hit the same guy, in which case he's probably dead. Or they might have spread it out. That's the thing with archery. When there's 6 bowmen standing on top of the wall watching these 3 guys running with ladders, unless the bowmen are really well trained and have somebody telling them, you get this one, you get, they may end up all putting all 6 of their arrows into the same guy. That's why I run it the way I do. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's so excruciating you've got three mini hit point monsters, and you're inflicting 3 and 4 and 5 points, and you keep spreading it out and spreading it out and spreading it out until finally they start dropping, and then pretty soon they're all dropping with it. You could do it that way. Sometimes I'll put monsters in an encounter that aren't at full strength. They're nursing wounds. There's whatever. You can mix it up a little that way. And now a further one depends on the exact configuration of the harnesses. Some cuirasses are just a breastplate, but breast and backplate is fairly common. Straps on the side, yeah, okay. But still in all, to get fully armored in a full plate suit, you've got to have help. All right, now, new topic. My kids have expressed an interest in 5e because of the power the player characters possess. I retort, my first edition assassin can backstab a giant with a two-handed sword for 3d6 times 4 for 12d6 damage and save versus poison or die. Their eyes get wide, and then I remind them, if I surprise a giant, I can do that to each of them before the initiative dice are ever rolled. Now that I have their unwavering attention, I ask them, how much damage would it be if the sword is a giant slayer and my assassin is hasted? Needless to say, 5e did not impress them anymore. Yeah, you could pile up. See, that's the thing. It's not like you can't pile up and add on ads in first edition. You can. You get hasted, there's a +1. You get, this, that, and a certain spell and that. And you can, but it doesn't last forever. And that's my objection. You can buff yourself up real powerfully for a period of time, but it doesn't last forever. Simultaneous attacks, are these outside the scope of old school rules? Probably. Old school rules didn't have player characters that could, until damn Driz, whatever his name is, till he became so wildly popular, D&D didn't have much trouble telling players and playing, no, two-handed weapons, you can't be that. Well, along comes Drizzle, and he's like uber, super powerful. He's got should have a 20 agility, and so now he wants to do it. So no, in the old school rules, you couldn't do it. Now, the exception was if you found if you were somebody that used throwing knives, and you found some really good ones, I roll initiative with a 10-sider, zeros go first and 9s go last. And so if you threw one on 0 or 1, I'd certainly let you throw the other one at just a little minus, somewhere around 7 or 8, because, and you have some training in it. So I might allow it there, but for the most part, no. It just wasn't. We didn't deal with that. And here we go. See, I can always rely on somebody to answer somebody's questions. They go on to talk about how in the first edition DMG, attacks were simultaneous unless weapon speed factors were considered. And I do the same thing. I use that 10-round system. That is the initiative. I don't use a D6 unless there is a surprise. But initiative is D10 for me. That's the way I like to do it. I get a better gradation. If somebody rolls a 2 and they're going to shoot an arrow that they hadn't specifically held, knocked in the bow, not drawn but knocked, then I'll say, okay, go in 5. They go from 2 to 5 while they're getting out the arrow. If they have the arrow knocked, well, then I might add only 1 on them because they're not walking around with the bow drawn. It does take a measure of time to knock an aim or draw an aim. And yeah, there's again, if depending upon the depth you get into, you can interrupt a spellcaster. But there again, I don't get into that detail. The way I play it, a wizard rolls just the same as a fighter when they're rolling on a 10-sider. However, yes, I will back a wizard up if it's a complex spell or something like that. I will. No, you go in 5 more segments or whatever. Okay, so going on again, how does that translate to the way characters vie for or fall into attack turns? And then this again is the old thing about, is it simultaneous? Yeah. 5 adventurers walk in on 5 orcs, picking through the carcasses of something they just killed. Whatever, they walk in on them. Hack, 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 and it's over. I use the 10-sider more for when is it your turn. Now, I favor the players in that if a player rolls a 0 and I roll a 0, I let him go first. And if he hits the particular monster that rolled the 0 and kills him, that monster doesn't get a roll back. That's the only interleaving of the attacks and damage that I do. I find it works very good, very well, especially on big combats, with 8, 10, 12 individuals thrashing around and beating on each other. And going along with what I said earlier, I don't let the monsters pick an opponent. If a monster hits, then I roll whatever's the appropriate die to see which character it hit. Because again, I do most of my melees as a whirling, swirling, confused mass, and unless specifically designated otherwise. And that, therefore, yeah, they all might hit you this turn. But then again, you may all hit that one in one turn and kill it outright, which is oftentimes better than spreading. If you got 2 big, like ogres, and they each got about 40 points, wouldn't it be better if all 3 of you hit it and got 38 points that turn than each of the ogres only got 14? See where I'm going with that? It works. It works more often to the benefit of the player characters than it does to the monsters. And then we go on, and I'm getting tired of talking about this. Weapons, how you work it out. I generally don't consider weapon speed. Generally, keyword clue, generally. Where it's an obvious, somebody swinging a polearm to somebody flinging a dagger or shooting a bow, well, obviously the polearm's slower. And that might come into effect in the melee, whatever you call it. I don't even call it the same thing all the time. I'm so confused. So, it does talk about the first edition, goes into the page 66, initiative timing. I use a system somewhat like that. Probably has a common root in the week we spent in Gary's office writing the first edition advanced. And yeah, you can, going on again, yes, you can both take damage at the same time. That's why in my games I give the player the advantage, because the only games I run nowadays are Wheel of Blame or at cons. So I generally give the players the advantage of, okay, you hit me, oh, I'm dead, okay, I don't get to hit you. I generally fudge in favor of the players. Unlike the first 7 or 8 years I was back in the industry and I killed everybody. And you heard dumb? Too bad. I had no pity. I was really old school back then. Old Testament old school. Now here's something I didn't... If this is a rule, I don't remember it. As for the round of 10 segments, the initiative D6 is only concerned about the first 6 segments of action. Afterwards, in the remaining 4 segments, players with additional attacks or spells or casting times go into those remaining segments. Okay. That works as good as anything. I don't know if that's a rules as written or not. That would... There are some provisions for being able to get off 2 arrows in a turn. And there are a couple of other exceptions to the rule. And yes, that's what you do. However, that archer who gets 2 shots in a round rolls a 6, well, he doesn't get his second shot until the 0 of the next round. I stagger it back and forth like that. So, and the same could happen to the monster. The same thing could happen. So, yeah, okay, you can get 2. They aren't simultaneous. You don't swing both. You know, you're not Drizzle running in with 2 swords all at once. You know, doing salad making. Anyway. And one last interesting question. In my game, only the thief class gets XP for gold, and that is only for gold or treasure that is successfully stolen, pickpocketed, pilfered, etc. I give the party XP for monsters defeating split between the entire party. Then per adventure, I give a bonus based on how they did on the adventure, with more being awarded for success and how successful they were. Sounds like a wonderful system to me. I can't see anything wrong with it. I'm not here to find wrong. I used to figure out, and you know, back in the early days, we had that stupid figure out how much they're worth by how many hit dice and how many pluses, and eventually we kind of honed that down into more generalities. And I'd figure out, okay, I didn't give individual players individual points unless they did something really extraordinary individually. Now, if it so happened that this individual killed that thing all by his or herself, then yeah, they got those points. But in a group action, just because you delivered the final 8, you didn't get them. The party split them up. And no, it wasn't, well, that person didn't hit that monster. It's the all for one, one for all thing, the Three Musketeers ethic. We're all in this together. We're all trying to survive this together. We all got a common goal. And again, if your players, how fast you award experience, it's entirely up to you. To go back to an earlier comment, if you run through, the first 4 levels, you're going to give them a false expectation of promotion speed. So you got to kind of be careful with that, because all of a sudden they're not going up every 3rd adventure. They may lose interest. Of course, when you show them the points needed on the progression chart, they might get an understanding of it. But they still might not be happy because I'm not more powerful this month than I was last month. Well, okay. Of course, you had to be brought back from the dead twice last month. Anyway, I guess that's it. At Gamehole, I'm going to have a few number 2 issues of Gygax that had my Samurai Battles article. we have a link already up on Mud Puppy where anybody who already has the article can click on that, download it. I think it's probably my Word file. I don't know what Jim did to it. It's probably my Word file. Or else he might have cleaned it up, made it look a little nicer. And so we're going to Gamehole in 3-4 weeks. And I guess I've run out of gaming things to talk about. Ooh, how did that happen? Well, actually I didn't, but I think it's probably time to say Todata Gobi.
Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Last man around when the race went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.
Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with tramp under a tree,
High as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.